Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Shields and Arrows, where we defend the faith, the family, and the fellowship. And in order to do so, we have to cover a wide variety of topics. And that's exactly what today's show is. It's a wide variety of topics. All right, now, let's see here. We are going to be talking about some interesting controversy surrounding I can't remember what channel they were on, but basically they were house flippers, if you will. The Gaines family, Chip and Joanna, I think that they're down in Waco, Texas, or at least they used to be down in Waco, Texas. And they were pretty popular. I know some people that would go to I guess they got a store there, maybe it's called the Silos. Anyways, trying to recall all of this. The main reason why I'm discussing it is they are, at least still are, openly Christian, but in their more recent show that they have started, they had a situation in which two men who believed they were married to each other or were a couple of some sort who had twin boys, which how did they get those? Because two men can't have children. Regardless, it's been very interesting to see the fallout, and they have doubled down on their defense of having these two men on the show. We're going to be talking about John MacArthur. He passed away yesterday, or maybe early this morning, but he is gone now. And we're going to talk about, there's really, I think, two main routes for him to be remembered by, maybe three. And I am worried that he is going to be more famously remembered as John MacArthur, the Calvinist, not John MacArthur, the leaky dispensationalist. But we'll save some more of that discussion. And then I have a question/response comment from Louise, our good friend, and I'm going to get to that as well. It involves Epstein and also I think a theology question on maybe something out of the Gospels. So a lot of variety here. That's why I named today's episode A Variety of Topics. And apparently it's Tom's birthday today, so happy birthday, Tom. Really happy to have you with us today. Great to have all of you. I see Brett's back with us, our friend from South Africa. He says, good morning and good evening. Well, good morning, good evening to you as well. All right, so first and foremost, let's go ahead and get to this topic of Chip and Joanna Gaines. The Christian Post is the article that I'm going to be using. And here it is. Chip Gaines defends gay couple on new show, slams modern American Christian culture. All right, so once again, controversy is, they specialize in houses and people living in these said houses. And so regardless, they're doing this kind of interesting thing on today's, or this modern show that they're doing. I guess it's different from previous ones where they were doing house flipping and whatnot. It's called Back to the Frontier. And so it's, on their Magnolia network. And basically the idea is, they live as homesteaders, in the 1800s. And long story short, one such example was a pair of men who were a gay couple, and they are living this homesteading lifestyle. And the couple, Chip and Joanna Gaines, like I said, being outspoken Christians, have received quite a bit of pushback from a lot of their supporters, feeling betrayed, that they have undermined their Christian values and all the good work that they have done. And what's interesting is the response is not that, we're not really that serious about our Christian faith. Their response was not, we'll consider your thoughts here. Maybe we should have contemplated this further, and we will continue to contemplate this issue. No, they really did double down. So, response here from Chip Gaines. Chip Gaines reacted to the negative reactions to his new show featuring a same-sex couple in an ex-post published Sunday. Talk, ask questions, listen, maybe even learn. Too much to ask of modern American Christian culture. Judge first, understand late/never. It's a sad Sunday when non-believers have never been confronted with hate or vitriol until they are introduced to a modern American Christian. So that's his approach. So a few things there in his comment. Talk, ask questions, listen, maybe even learn. If they just happened to have somebody on the show who was a homosexual, I do think maybe consider that it was a gay person that was involved in the remodeling of a house. That is one thing, okay? The issue is their entire premise of their show, their platform, it's about people living in homes. You are just, as a byproduct, endorsing, promoting same-sex marriage or same-sex couples. That is a distinct difference. I would allow a person who is homosexual to come visit our church. That is not endorsing them. If we were to openly vote them in to be a member of our church, or to, even, host a wedding, so-called, right? That would obviously be an endorsement. For them to have a gay couple on their show, and that gay couple living in a home, that is an endorsement of homosexuality. It just is. So I don't see what Chip Gaines is trying to say by talking about this concept of listening or learning. What is there to talk, ask questions, listen, learn? What is there to learn? Okay, so they're nice. Well, that's great. Glad they're nice people. There's a lot of nice people who are not Christian. There's a lot of nice people who are engaging in all sorts of things. I would imagine that there are some members of the cartel who are quite nice. That's kind of shocking, isn't it? But yeah, running drugs, and yet maybe generally nice people. That's kind of a extreme example, but it's entirely possible. And I bet they're especially nice to their children. Remember in the Gospels, Jesus talks about what man wouldn't give to his child bread, right? What man would give to his child a serpent. There is basic niceness and kindness, and if they're engaging and interacting with people in the world, that's great. But what does that have to do with the moral matter of endorsing or supporting homosexuality? So, I apologize, I didn't silence my phone here. So, what exactly does Chip Gaines want his Christian audience to understand? Could he articulate that? Or is he just going to speak in the vague and make it so that they are completely unjustified in their taking of issue? Once again, if he had somebody who was his, taping and bedding is kind of a skill when it comes to drywall. I've never done it because it takes skill in order to do it. I can hang drywall, but I can't tape and bed drywall. If you're modeling houses and you have let's just go with a Muslim, all right, and he's really good at taping and bedding. Okay, that's great. But if you're, building a house for the Muslim and his multiple wives, it's an entirely different matter at hand. So I don't understand his critique. I don't understand why he feels the need to say Christians aren't listening or understanding. we see the matter quite clearly. You are engaging in enabling two men to live together as if it was a man and woman, but they're not. Marriage cannot occur between two men. It doesn't matter what you call it. That's one of the major problems. By calling it gay marriage, you are trying to legitimize it. It's just like calling an illegal alien an undocumented person. It doesn't matter. You can use whatever terminology you want. Undocumented Americans. It doesn't make them American. Calling gay marriage doesn't make it marriage. This is, to be completely honest, such weak, I would say, early 2010s Christian type mentality. Oh, let's just love people. That's we tried it. It didn't work. You know what that got us? You know what tolerant Christianity got us? It got us women being forced to share restrooms with men. All right? That's where that got us. It got us to the point of completely undermining the entire concept of men and women. Need I remind you, you don't hear about it much right now. Now, it may certainly circle back and become an issue soon. Remember back when Joe Biden was in office, when transgenderism still had a decent amount of momentum. They've really lost a lot of momentum in the recent years, especially with Trump being elected. Do you remember MAPS? Not maps that you look at to go places, but the acronym, Minor Attracted Persons. This was a legitimate push and effort to normalize pedophiles. Did you forget about this? I haven't. I hope you didn't forget about it either. I bet the liberal media wants you to forget about it and pretend as if there was not a push amongst some in the LGBTQ umbrella to bring along minor attracted persons into the fold. Why don't we hear about it as much anymore? Because we took a stand and we said no to transgenderism, and at least in a broad way, and therefore they weren't able to take it further. I know there's a lot of libertarians out there. I know that there are a lot of people that just want the government to leave them alone. I'm sorry, but you cannot ride the fence. You either do have to hold to conservative values, traditional values, or you will just go into leftism. Now, that's not to say that there's not room for small government libertarian ideology. But the libertarianism that took over America, it was just liberalism. Or it was libertarianism with no moral code. The Libertarian Party, I'm pretty sure, didn't they in 2024 run an openly gay man for their presidential candidate? So, with that being said, I hope that Chip, Joanna Gaines, they realize that this is not sound doctrine. This is not what Christianity needs to be. It doesn't need to be this big umbrella of just loving people. And then, we just need to understand. We just need to listen. We just need to love people. No. Listening, loving, understanding, those are all great terms. They sound so nice. What we need to do is listen, understand, and learn what God's Word says. There is an order for creation. Marriage has a clear definition. And when you engage in this activity of showing two men living together on your show, you are endorsing an unbiblical thing. No different than if you were showing, promoting the act of idolatry. If they helped to build a home and constructed a statue to Buddha in that house, that's also an immoral thing. It's a wrong thing to do. We don't have idols that we bow down to. they have to have a moral code. And that's Scripture. All right, so those are my thoughts there. They are completely wrong in that. Good on Christians who are pushing them, making them feel the heat. And some people are. So, for example, Joe Barry, the managing editor of the Babylon Bee, replied to Gaines' post by assuring him, "You'll see no hate from me. I'm just sad I can't let my kids watch your show now since I'm trying to protect their eyes and hearts from the lies of the world, lies you are now participating in." So good for him. Absolutely calling him out. And that's it. If you are a Christian parent, it is so difficult to find anything that's decent for your kids to watch. This is a problem that I have, right? Because I have kids and I'm trying to find things that they can watch, they can enjoy. And you have to be so careful, so selective. My kids do not get to watch a number of things because my kids don't watch Miss Rachel because Miss Rachel's openly supported the LGBTQ agenda. And so that's just another show that they're not going to be able to watch. And you can say, well, just don't turn on that episode. Yeah, I understand, but now you are openly endorsing it. You've got to put your money where your mouth is. And so with all that being said, good on Christians who are standing up to it, calling them out for the issue. And hopefully the Gaines family realizes that whoever, and maybe this wasn't their idea, somebody just convinced them that this would be good. Hopefully they realize that whoever directed them, pushed them in that direction, made a very bad recommendation. All right. Now, let's talk about John MacArthur. So John MacArthur has passed away. I think he was 86 years old is what we said. And obviously, we would have sympathy for the MacArthur family in this time of loss. I know he was a father, a husband, a grandfather. What I really do want to think about, though, you're going to see on social media, if you're on it, a lot of people speaking about how great John MacArthur was. Many of them are calling him the R.C. Sproul of our generation, or even the Spurgeon of our generation, which I hope that I never get lumped in with Sproul or Spurgeon. Whether we like it or not, MacArthur is a major transformative type preacher. One reason why he was so popular is because he did do verse-by-verse Bible study. He did popularize, to a large degree, expository Bible study in a world of preachers just doing topical studies all the time and never doing expository studies. He did do verse by verse. Now, I am not an expository preacher. All right, I don't think that preaching the Bible expositionally is how it is to be done. I think that the Bible needs to be preached exegetically. Expositionally is looking for application. All right, looking for application in Scripture. That really is the expositional approach. Taking it verse by verse and then making the relevant application, which you can't always make relevant application. That's hence my problem with expository preaching. But he did popularize at least the idea of taking the Bible verse by verse. My big question is, what is he going to be remembered for? And I think this is going to come down, or this will decide this matter I was talking about yesterday of, was John MacArthur a net positive for Christianity? If he will be remembered as John MacArthur, the somewhat dispensationalist, because, I mean, truth be told, to look up John MacArthur teaching on Romans chapter 11, verses 1 through 10, the first half of that is quite good. It really is, because a major point that he makes in his Romans chapter 11 study is God made certain promises to Israel. That Israel is not spiritual Israel. It is the actual offspring of Abraham, and God will see to it that those promises are fulfilled. That's a very good thing. He says things in that sermon that you would hear me say, that God does not break His promises. He will see to it to give Israel the Messianic kingdom as He promised. With that in mind, John MacArthur could absolutely be remembered as a good, somewhat dispensational Bible teacher. In the very essence, he understands that there is a distinction between promises to Israel in the Old Testament. He really did. He may kind of speak out of both sides of his mouth at times, but he at least affirmed that the new covenant was for Israel in that sermon. Here, the problem that I see and that I'm worried about is I do not think John MacArthur's leaky dispensationalism is going to be the big takeaway from his legacy. All right? As Dr. White has said before, he thinks that all the dispensationalism leaked out of him. And there probably is a really strong case to say that as the years went on, he was less dispensationally minded. And so with that, I am worried that John MacArthur is going to have a legacy of building up Calvinist doctrine, increasing the reach of Calvinism, the influence, the scope, converting preachers, churches to Calvinism. And he's not going to be known as the mild dispensationalist that he at least was at a time in his ministry. And if that's the case, if he is going to be known as John MacArthur the Calvinist, it is hard to say that all of his work and ministry is going to be beneficial to Christianity, because Calvinism has been so damaging to our Bible studies, to our doctrine. Because of Calvinism, we have completely misunderstood the ministry of Jesus. We've completely misunderstood the age of grace. We've confused the gospel even. Unfortunately, I think a lot of Calvinists are counting on their election to be their means of salvation and not by faith alone. And it's also added so many works in because they don't have any sense of rightly dividing. And if that is his legacy, then it will overall be a net negative. I would hope that some people, if they do start to reflect back on John MacArthur, and when somebody dies, often their stuff's going to be viewed more. Maybe they'll go back and listen to some of those studies that he did in the Old Testament, some of the studies he did concerning a future for Israel, and maybe some sentiment of that dispensational doctrine may prevail, may persist. So, with that being said, it is, like I said yesterday, it's hard to judge what his net effect is going to be. And there's a very serious debate, and I struggle with this. And some right dividers would not maybe be as lenient as me. The net effect of even Billy Graham's ministry. I do take more lenience towards Billy Graham, but I understand that there is a thought or an observation that we drifted away from biblical study and doctrine in part as a result of the Crusades of Billy Graham. Now, with that being said, you don't get to put all the blame on Billy Graham, because these things were Billy Sunday. You can name a number of these preachers in times past who, Billy Graham didn't start the fire. He followed a pattern of what he saw in others, and so what's the net result there? So history's complex. Like I said, you can look back on Martin Luther as a hero of the Reformation, or you can look back on Martin Luther as still too Catholic, and he should have done a lot more. it's never quite so cut and dry. So as much as I am tempted to immediately speak of John MacArthur as a man who did a lot of damage through his promotion of Calvinism, I'm going to have to wait and see how it all plays out. But I will say right now, it certainly seems like a lot of people are emphasizing his Calvinist doctrine and not his dispensationalist doctrine that he at least had at a point during his ministry, his years of service. And that is going to be impactful one way or the other. And I'd be curious to see your thoughts. When you think of John MacArthur, do you think of John MacArthur the Calvinist, or do you think of John MacArthur the leaky dispensationalist? And regardless, I do think that we have to talk about it. We have to acknowledge John MacArthur's influence. And I hope that in the years to come, we're going to have a right divider who will have a similar impact. I really do. Right division will probably never be very popular, just because there's not enough there that people are going to want to grasp. They don't like the idea that the words written in red, first of all, probably shouldn't be in red. We should just let all the Word of God be equal in value. But not being able to apply it to them, it takes away so much power that preachers may have over a congregation by preaching the rightly divided grace message. With that being said, I do hope that somebody could come along and have an impactful ministry, kind of like John MacArthur's, where a lot of people follow his teaching, understanding his doctrine thoroughly, and maybe would persuade some, because there's no doubt that John MacArthur made many a man Calvinist. So maybe we can have somebody who can make many a man right dividers. Okay, now with that being said, let's get into an interesting discussion now. A little bit of theology, but also we're also going to talk about Jeffrey Epstein some more. So this is I got an email here from Louise. First of all, Louise sent me a theology question last week, and I forgot to look at it. So Louise, when you get to watch this later, I know you're at work. I do apologize. Now, Dr. White has his set up to where his questions all get put into a single bank. And I don't have that, so I've got to look for them. And sometimes if you send me a question, I will overlook them. And it's not on purpose. So I do apologize for missing your question. But Louise does have some thoughts. So she says, why I really write back is to comment on your thoughts regarding the Epstein case. I must say that I heartily disagree with you on this. First of all, I appreciate it when people disagree with me, because it just shows me that you think for yourself. You're not just here to take whatever I say and then just repeat it wherever you hear it. So I want my listeners to have their own opinions. Otherwise, we would never grow. You would never challenge me. I would never challenge you. We would just be in this thing of sitting around in a circle repeating the same thing over and over. So thank you, Louise, for disagreeing with me. It is important because of the massive crime, hardly a sufficient word for what was done, but I'm just going to use this generic term since I couldn't find a more appropriate word for this atrocity at this moment, committed against humanity, specifically children, the most helpless and vulnerable class, and young women in this case. If this can be covered up, then anything can be covered up. We have no morality, no justice, and no nothing in this country if we can still call ourselves a country. Moreover, the perpetrators got away scot-free, which means they and others will be emboldened to continue on this, knowing they never have to account for it except before Almighty God. So this is not just a case of being distracted so we can focus on the other more important matters. Other matters are important, so is this one, more than ever. I believe it is also a great abomination to God. As you can see, I feel very passionate about this topic. That's why I have to write. I'm doing that because it's in all caps. I have to write to express my alternative view. I do not know how many of your audience feel the same way as I do and how many write you about it, but I surely do. All right, so first of all, Louise, I think a lot of people who are listening do agree with you. And let me summarize in case anybody missed. For the past couple shows, yesterday's show and then I think it was on Friday, I did mention the Epstein matter. And as many of you know, for years, we heard there was a list. There's a list of people that were traveling with Epstein to his island, and obviously the speculation is engaging in all sorts of horrible atrocities, committing grievous crimes against these young women, these children, is what I should say, these children. And we were waiting to get the list, who all is involved, and there were some names leaked that flew on Epstein's plane. And the Trump administration, well, Trump campaign said when they get in office, they're going to give us all these files. We're going to get the Epstein files, the JFK files, the Martin Luther King files, and then Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, who I'm no fan of, by the way, I've said this many times, said that she had the list on her desk. That's certainly how it sounded. Now they're kind of trying to say that she was just saying she had the Epstein file on her desk. And so we were going to get a list of names, but then we never really got anything that was any different from what we've gotten before. And then in a memo, they just kind of under the table last week said Epstein killed himself. There are no files. There's nothing. And then Trump in an interview said, well, why are we still talking about this guy? There's more important things going on. We've got Texas. We've got all these good things that we're doing. Let's quit talking about this creep. That's a paraphrase of what Trump said. So I gave my thoughts on the matter. And basically, I summarized it as I do not expect to get such information from our federal government. If Epstein really was this intelligence guy, he had blackmail, a whole list of very important people, I don't anticipate the federal government to give us such information and details. And I also said maybe it is possible that they're telling us the truth, that they oversold what they thought they had, and then as they read more, they decided, no, it sounds like Epstein did kill himself. The evidence says he did, and we really don't have a list of anybody who was committing crimes against these children on Epstein Island. That is possible. Now, I then went on, and I may have used those words, there's other more important things at hand. What I was trying to say is that this is causing a major divide in the conservative side of the aisle. And I understand. Because when you're promised something and it's not delivered, and then it's so suspicious as the Epstein stuff, you feel betrayed and you feel almost as if they're lying to you, that there's a cover-up going on. What I said was, remember the reasons why we voted for Trump. We voted for Trump because of the border, because of foreign policy, and also just as a complete rejection of the progressive, divisive, DEI, America Last policies of the Biden administration. The Epstein files were not the primary platform. And so as a result, I just kind of took the approach, what are you going to do? The federal government's always going to let you down. Let's focus on the matters at hand. Like I said, the more important matters at hand. Luis comes with a very legitimate and very important concern that this is not a minor issue. That something is serious about Epstein with all the charges. Why is Ghislaine Maxwell in prison right now if she was not trafficking young girls? After all this time of us being told there was a list, all of the shady business surrounding Epstein, the people that he was, he rubbed elbows with everybody. Why was he involved? It seemed like with every major government, every major leader, people involved in all sorts of things. And especially considering how heinous the crimes are, the trafficking of young girls, how can we just let this go away? And then his mysterious suicide, supposedly, right? His mysterious death. That, oh yeah, he committed suicide. No, the cameras weren't working for whatever reason. And even though he was on, suicide watch, he still managed to kill himself. Well, how? How was he able to kill himself? That's what we all want to know. And that's why there's the ongoing joke, or not even a joke. I hate to even use the term. It's just the line. Epstein didn't kill himself. The line communicates much more than just Epstein, but it's a line that says, we don't just believe what we're told, and we think that we get lied to a lot. And you have been lied to a lot. COVID's a great example, but there's many other great examples. We were lied to about Biden's mental capacity. On and on and on it goes. So, Luis, I fully understand your position here. These perpetrators, assuming there are perpetrators, right? If what we believe is true, that there was a list, there were clients, there were people going to this island, engaging in all these things, they're going to get away scot-free, which means they're going to do it again. All right? They're going to be emboldened on this. And so she says this is not just a case of being distracted so we can focus on more important matters. These are important matters. So Louise, I want you to know I fully, well, it's hard to know exactly how people feel. I understand where you're coming from. And I also feel your frustration. And I don't necessarily believe that the federal government's being entirely true. I am not entirely convinced that Kash Patel is being honest. I'm not entirely convinced that Pam Bondi, Donald Trump, is being honest with us. I never said that I think Trump was telling the truth. Now, I do think that I do think Trump is a good politician, and I do think that he tries to avoid leading us on to pull the rug out from underneath us. I don't see him do that very often. If he genuinely, for example, in the 2020 election, right, him and his political team, or their legal team, they thought they were going to release the crack and prove that it was stolen. I think Trump genuinely believed he had something, and then for whatever reason just couldn't quite show enough evidence to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt. So I am willing to give some, I'm trying to think of how I want to put it. I am willing to give some good faith to Trump. At the same time, I'm not entirely convinced that we're not being lied to some capacity. And it does make me mad. I guess my thoughts on the matter, if I'm trying to put everything together, the government lies to us all the time about stuff. And my expectations are so low that I never expect for there to be any kind of think about how many forced COVID vaccines upon people. There's never going to be a form of compensation for that. There's never going to be. Think about all the people that developed issues. We know a lot of people. Personally, I know people who received the vaccine and had negative responses. Was it myocarditis? Was that one of the major responses to the issue? The government's never going to come out and compensate people for that. Any health issues that may come about from it. Because our federal government doesn't take responsibility for things. They just don't. You see that in how money is spent. There's a whole source of, a whole list of examples that you can see in which our federal government does not do the right thing. So, and maybe that's my, and maybe this is working towards your side because you're holding them to a higher standard, which we should. And I'm simply saying, well, yep, what else were you expecting? It's the federal government. So I think we need people like Louise and others who are willing to keep the government's feet to the fire on the matter. And I'm not saying you shouldn't. As I think about it, my position was much more, well, this sounds like more of the same to me. The story of the government is never doing the thing you actually want them to do. Rick agrees with you, Louise. Yeah, Louise, I totally agree. You put it so well, for exactly the reasons you stated. And she did put it so well. Justice should be served. Trying to think of oh my goodness, I'm drawing a blank here. But Derek Chauvin, right? The police officer who was found guilty of murder of George Floyd. That's one of the biggest jokes in the world. Nobody with any objective reasoning would believe that Derek Chauvin murdered George Floyd. The guy was saying he couldn't breathe when he was standing upright and seated in the car. George Floyd was a guy high on drugs. He's a very large male. And let's just be completely honest, this is just fact here. Large black males are known to have heart conditions. A number of them do. Just when you look at statistics, I'm just talking about facts here. When you look at heart disease, it is obvious, it's apparent that he died from a combination of likely poor health conditions and the abuse of drugs. And the government has done nothing for Derek Chauvin. Not a thing. Trump has not pardoned him, which he absolutely should, because he's an innocent man. So our federal government does all sorts of things that's wrong. Immoral. Justice is not always done. Here's another example for you, and this strikes near and dear to me. There is a foster parent, I hate to even call him that, close to where my church is. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but they're close to our church. These kids, there's a number of them, from young to old. They are horrifically treated. They are exposed to the worst of things that this world has to offer. There is no nurturing love or care that is going on. Our church has tried so many times to reach out to DHS, to the district attorney, to get these kids out of this place, because it is a nightmare. And one of those little kids is around my son's age. And there's another one younger than that. They will do nothing. DHS does nothing. Law enforcement does nothing, because the district attorney and the foster program will do nothing. They call ahead ever so often to tell this foster parent that they're going to come by and do an inspection, which is just enough time to clean up the house, hide the things that they want hid, and then make sure there's a little bit of food in the pantry. And they get to keep getting the checks from those kids. They are using the children just for money. And in my story, if I'm wrong in my facts, you know it's true, because it happens all over this country in this horrible foster care system. Now, I'm not saying that every foster care parent's bad. There's some that are amazing people, a gift from the Lord, absolutely. and I use it in that sense with dispensational discernment in mind, right? We thank the Lord for them, right? But some of these people are horrible people, and they're taking advantage of these kids. Our government is corrupt, messed up, and wrong in so many ways. So when I reflect on the Epstein issue, let's go to the fullest extent and say that everything is as bad as we may theorize. That our federal government is covering up a pedophile, human trafficking ring. And Epstein was involved in the CIA, Mossad, whatever else you want to put him in. Sounds like par for the course. That's kind of my point. Sounds like par for the course. We know that southern border, before Trump thankfully came and really got it under control, and I hope they do a whole lot more, it was a place of child trafficking, women trafficking, I'm sure everything else, harvest trafficking, you name it. And our federal government did not care. They did nothing, knowing that children were being sold into slavery. So I'm thankful for people like Louise and those of you who are not just throwing up your hands and saying, well, of course, which I did, because I've just seen it play out over and over and over and over and over again. And I could go over a whole other list of stories that we've never been told the truth on. How in the world did a shooter manage to get on top of that building and take a shot at Trump? 2017, Mandalay Bay. Dozens of people killed. I mean, 60-something people killed? This guy manages to get up to the 40th floor of a hotel room with all this guns and ammunition, firing a gun that sounds to me nothing like a gun with a bump stock. It sounds like a belt-fed, fully automatic machine gun. I may get kicked off of YouTube. We're going live on Worshify. Trust me, I can go on and on. My trust for the government, even when a Republican is in office, is still, you got to dig down below surface level to get to my levels of trust. So my practical mind says, let's focus on the border, because maybe we can get some good done there. Let's focus on building our military and foreign policy and putting down this ridiculous woke DEI agenda, because our government's never proven itself to care much about these issues regarding Epstein or anything else. So my message to Louise, my response is, don't give up the fight. Keep yelling, keep making noise. Don't let it go, and don't maybe be so I guess defeatist in your mentality as me, because my hopes in ever getting the government to come clean on anything is very low. So thank you. I appreciate you. I appreciate Rick. I appreciate all of you who have those sentiments. My frustration for you is there, and for the victims of Epstein and whoever else was victimized by it. Ken says, Jen and I think they might be the names secret for, let's say, blackmail reasons. I wouldn't put it past them. I would not put it past them. This is a government, folks, that's allowed Planned Parenthood to murder children, and we know that from that was used for all sorts of medical reasons. Stem cell research, you name it. All right? Don't put it past them. What do you expect? Still give me Trump over Kamala Harris. That was kind of my summary, though. Give me Trump over Kamala Harris, because at least he's going to do a few things that is better than what we've what we would have gotten and what we had under Biden. All right, so let me go ahead and look at Louise, her question. She says, Luke 22:31, and the Lord said, Simon, Simon, behold, Satan hath desired to have you, that he may sift you as wheat. Here, clearly, well, at least in my interpretation, Jesus is speaking to Simon, yet he used you. I did notice that the verse before it's ye, and the verse after is thee. The NIV, though, translated to sift you all as wheat. So the NIV is the broken clock that is right twice a day. And the Lord did mean to sift all of you instead of just Simon. All right, let me look and see. So this is going to be a translation comparison. First, let me go to Luke 22 and look at this verse here to see what the context is. Okay. Verse 30 says that ye may eat and drink at my table in my kingdom and sit on thrones judging the 12 tribes of Israel. Okay, so reference to kingdom matters here. Let me go up just a little bit further to maybe verse 28. Ye are they which have continued with me in my temptations, and I appoint unto you a kingdom, as my Father hath appointed unto me. So plural, plural, that ye may eat and drink. Verse 31, and the Lord said, Simon, Simon, behold, Satan hath desired to have you, that he may sift you as wheat. Okay, so we do have the you here. This is indication this is plural. Satan hath desired to have you, that he may sift you as wheat. But I have prayed for thee, that thy faith fail not, and when thou art converted, strengthen thy brethren. Now, this line, when thou art converted, this is singular. When thou art converted. I do think, so if we compare this to the NIV, which I'm going to have to find a comparison to do it, Luke 22, 30, let me see if I can find I guess this is where I could use Logos. Let me see if I can get Logos to pull up here for me so we can work through it like this. Just a moment. All right, let's see if we can do a text comparison here. Gotta see where I find it, because I don't always use Logos. Hold on. I'm looking for my text comparison tool here. And can I do this here? Trying to find my text comparison here for the NIV, but I'm about to give up. It's been so long since I've used Logos, I need to refamiliarize myself with it. What annoys me is I've got an article here for text comparison, but it doesn't let me actually do it. And I know you are getting tired of just sitting here looking at me look at this. I know it's very compelling, very entertaining. Here is a I do have the NIV right here pulled up. So let's just go ahead and look at the NIV. Simon, Simon, Satan has asked to sift all of you as wheat. But I prayed for you, Simon, that your faith may not fail. But when you have turned back, strengthen your brothers. But he replied, Lord, I am ready to go with you. All right, now, if we go back and look at your question to get to the heart of the matter there, what you said was, the NIV translated to sift you all as wheat, so the NIV is the broken clock that is right twice a day. What I would tell you is, in Luke 22:31, Louise, is because you have the you with the King James, verse 31 is plural. The Lord said, Simon, Simon, behold, Satan hath desired to have you, that he may sift you as wheat. And because of the King James language, this does tell us it's in the plural. So this is plural. This is plural. That ye may eat and drink at my table, this is referencing to the disciples. And this one is to the disciples as well. And in verse 32, this is the transition, but I have prayed for thee, that thy faith fail not. When thou art converted, strengthen thy brethren. This converted here, it very likely applies to when Peter confesses he loves the Lord 3 times, but maybe you could even say this is when he is filled with the Holy Spirit when he is converted. That's one possibility as well, when he is converted. So I think the NIV gets it wrong because the NIV, what it does is it uses you all the way through, and now it's a matter of interpretation. Because if you read the NIV, verse 31 certainly sounds like it's they did understand that it's plural because it says sift all of you as wheat. But then verse 32 says, but I have prayed for you, Simon, that your faith may not fail. Because they use the modern pronoun you for everything, it's not quite as clear. But yes, in verse 31 here, the NIV actually does get this part right because they add all of you. All of you. But the rest of it's not very good because you just have the same pronoun all the way through here. You. That's why I like the King James, because you have that thee versus you or ye pronoun usage. But you are right, though. In that specific instance, the broken clock, which is the NIV, is correct there in Luke 22:31. In your interpretation, though, Jesus was speaking to Simon, but he was speaking in the plural. Louise, if that helps. Verse 31 is plural, and even the NIV actually got that part right. All right. Toby says, Jimmy Swaggart now, John MacArthur has passed, both very different. I have not listened to Jimmy Swaggart. I've heard people talk about him. Pentecostal evangelist. Assembly of God. You've got to realize I'm from a younger generation. I don't know necessarily all these names. Any thoughts before I let you all go this morning? What a fun hour it's been. All right, well, I guess if that's it, you're all content, you're all satisfied, then I'll let you go today for today's show. We will be back tomorrow. I'm going to have a little bit more theology probably to discuss tomorrow. I need to do that. I got an interesting question from a friend of mine. And so with that, really appreciate each and every one of you taking the time to join us today for this episode of Shields and Arrows, and continue to think for yourselves. Continue to be suspicious. Continue to be willing to call a spade, all right? So appreciate all of you, those like Louise and everyone else. And we will be back here tomorrow for more. Thank you all so much once again. Continue to defend the faith, the family, and the fellowship.